Before developing my first chronic illness in grad school, I struggled with my mental health. In fact, I've struggled with my mental health for as long as I can remember. My early memories are from struggling in elementary school and then continuing to struggle, especially with anxiety in middle school. And then I was hit with depression and grief in middle school as well when my dad suddenly passed away. One of the things that had a huge impact in my life from a positive standpoint is that I had a school counselor in middle school who advocated for me by making sure I was placed in a grief group. This grief group changed my life because I had a shared space where I knew that I wasn't alone, where I could process my grief, where I could feel my feelings, and where I learned about other people's devastating losses. And it helped me to remain grateful for what I did have. That even though I had lost someone near and dear to me, I still had love and support around me. And it was this early access to support, advocacy, and therapy that really kind of set me on this path of having access to other types of support and privileges later on to make sure that I was okay. And so this prompts me to want to bring up today's episode about the importance of mental health, especially in light of me going through a current grieving and mental health struggle as we speak. So it's going to be a bit more of a personal episode. I am going to wrap up the episode by sharing some strategies and things that I'm doing to remain proactive on taking care of myself and my mental health. And I'll also share some resources, including an upcoming workshop. So without further ado, let's get to it. Welcome to the top global ranked and award nominated Grad School Femtoring Podcast, the place for first-gen BIPOCs to listen in on conversations about grad school and growth. In this podcast, you'll learn about all things higher education, personal development, and sustainable productivity. This is Dr. Yvette Martinez-Vu, and I will be serving as your Femtor, providing you with tips and tricks and everything else you need to know to successfully navigate grad school and beyond. For over 14 years, I've been empowering first-gen students of color along their personal and professional journeys, and I'm really excited to support you too. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Grad School Femtoring Podcast. This is your host, Dr. Yvette. Today, I'm wearing a white t-shirt. I've got blue and silver beaded earrings. I have a gray headband. My hair is down. It's a little wavy. It's dark brown, mid-length, and I'm wearing my tan over-ear headphones. I'm sitting on the same purple chair I usually sit on, and I've got a mic to my bottom left. And like I mentioned in my intro, I have had struggles with my mental health for a very long time. And it's very much, for me, something that happens seasonally, or there might be triggers, or might be related to certain losses where I start to notice that I'm just not feeling as great as I used to feel. And I am actually in the middle of a grieving process in that I recently found out that my therapist passed away. It was a big shock. I'm still processing that information, and I feel a little bit, what's the word? Just very disoriented because the person that I would normally go to process these events, like big events in my life, is no longer around. And like I mentioned, I am a big advocate for mental health support and seeking therapy because I have been on and off in therapy since I was a child. I continued to pursue therapy in college, was also involved in support groups in college. I did the same thing in grad school, on and off, was working in therapy for a number of different reasons, and also on and off was part of support groups, including a very, very helpful dissertation support group. I mean, another one that was actually really, really helpful too was when I was in college and I joined a relationship support group. And this was super insightful for me because I was a college student, but it was a mixed group of undergraduates and graduate students. So I got to meet graduate students that were struggling, and I realized, whoa, I thought it was just me, but this is like across all age groups and all identities and all backgrounds. So, in any case, yeah, I've been in and out of therapy for longer than I can remember. I continued on working with therapists when I was working in higher ed. And again, a lot of this is tied to the privilege that I've had, the privilege of having access to university health insurance as a college student, as a graduate student. And then also, I did have a benefit as a university employee to get access to on campus therapy support services when I worked in the UC system. So, all this has been great. It has been a bit more challenging now on my end as someone who is self employed, who is no longer affiliated with the university to get access to mental health support. But what it reminds me of is actually that the struggle that I'm going through is probably the struggle of many others. And it's probably even more pronounced for others because I at least have access to information. And that's what I want to share with you. In addition to sharing about my own struggles, I want to kind of let you know what I am doing to take care of myself and to proactively work on my mental health. So for me, since I've been self-employed, I've had to seek out my own therapy through, searching for either private practice therapists or folks who offer sliding scale therapy services. And actually, there's two resources I want to share right now that I'm actually looking into. The first one is called Open Path Collective. I've used it in the past. In fact, I used it several years ago to get couples counseling. That was super helpful. So glad. Couples counseling has been amazing. I know for some folks it doesn't work, but for me, like I'm very proactive. As soon as there's any issues, I want to do something about it. So thankfully, my husband and I are doing pretty well. He's my rock and has been supporting me through my ups and downs, both with my mental health and my physical health and all the stuff. So in any case, I did make use of Open Path Collective to find a sliding scale couples counselor. This must have been probably in 2017, if I remember correctly. And I have not used it since then, but I continue to hear good things from other folks. So I'm going to check it out. Another resource someone shared with me is a website called Talkspace, where you also get support through a therapist or a counselor. I haven't used this one myself, but I know of a friend who has started using it and she has only good things to say about it. So I'm going to look into that. Another resource I wanted to share is actually a book. And this is for folks who may also be dealing with grief. And let me pull it up. Hopefully, I can find it relatively quickly because this just came to mind right now. So, the book that I was referring to is called As Long as You Need by J.S. Park. So, As Long as You Need Permission to Grieve. And it provides an honest and unrushed guide for grieving and healing at your own pace. I have not read it, but it came from a trusted source. And I've read about it, but I haven't read the book. So I'm going to start reading it and let you all know what I think. But in the meantime, you can check it out for yourself if you are someone who is also in the middle of a grieving process. There's no right or wrong way to grieve. This is one thing that I've learned over time as I've experienced different types of losses, that there's no right or wrong way. Everybody also has their own timeline. Everybody feels all kinds of feels. And also that the grieving never ends. That you just learn to live and create a life with that hole or that gap in your heart for this person. So in any case, I hope that you can look into those resources for yourself if you think that would be helpful. Another resource that comes to mind that was recommended by someone who was actually a former guest on this podcast is the National Alliance on Mental Illness, NAMI for short. So I'll have to check that out to see in what ways I could benefit from this organization personally as well. Now, in terms of what I'm doing, I want to kind of mention a couple of things. One of the things that I do need to do when I feel okay enough to do this, because again, I'm feeling very, very disorienting feelings right now, is that eventually, when I'm comfortable enough, I will find a new therapist. I am okay in that I'm functioning, I'm getting by. The work I do really restores me. I'm grateful for that. I'm also grateful for my family, my loved ones, my friends. I know that they've got my back. I also have a coach, and I absolutely adore my coach, and she's so incredible, and I love her, but coaching is not the same as therapy. I actually have another episode where I talk about the distinction between coaching and therapy and consulting, and you're welcome to check it out. I can link it in the show notes if you want to check it out. But for me, coaching is great in that it's action oriented, it's future oriented, it's really about overcoming obstacles. Therapy for me is about processing, especially incidents from the past. It's about the healing process ultimately. And especially if you are struggling with some sort of diagnosed disorder, then it is imperative to work with a licensed therapist, someone who actually has been trained to support you in going through this healing process. So in any case, what am I doing right now? So when I'm ready, I will find a new therapist. I'm not ready right now, but I will. For now, I am letting myself feel my feels. I am allowing myself to have more time and space to be compassionate with myself. Because some of us, when we're going through a really hard time, especially with our mental health, and if we're still functioning, we might have this tendency of over functioning or even dissociating, just trying to do whatever we can do to not think about the thing to avoid our feelings. So for me, it's important to remain aware and feel my feelings. It's also important for me to tap into my support network. So instead of before, where I would stay quiet, remain silenced, I wouldn't talk about me struggling. I would just keep it to myself and then just go to therapy, and also even keep my therapy appointments to myself. I'd be embarrassed if someone ever saw a therapy appointment on my calendar, especially back when, when I was a grad student and working in higher ed. And now I'm no longer hiding it. I'm letting y'all know when I'm struggling, and I'm letting y'all know what I'm doing to make sure that I'm okay. Because I do believe that it's important for us to not remain silent, to voice out our issues, to advocate on behalf of others, and to not further stigmatize it. So I am sharing about it publicly. I am sharing about it with my support network. My friends know, my coach knows, my husband knows, my loved ones know. Even if I'm in the middle of a coaching session, I had one of my clients who asked me, like, how are you doing? I hope everything's okay. I heard about your therapist passing away. And I really thanked her for seeing my humanity and for checking in on me. And of course, the session wasn't about me, but even just to have those brief 5 minutes to check in and for me to be honest and say, you know what, it has been a struggle. I'm here. I can work, I can function, I can do my job and do it very well. And at the same time, I am also I'm having moments where I'm struggling, and I am also taking a mental health day every now and then. So tapping into my support network has been important. Also, this one is a bit of a challenge, but I know it's something that when I do it consistently, it helps me, is continuing with a mindfulness or spiritual practice or ritual. So for me, this involves deep breathing, It involves listening to guided meditations. It involves giving myself room and time to stretch. It involves even doing things like humming, the humming feeling. That vibration is really good with stimulating your vagus nerve and relaxing you. It involves journaling. And I say this is a challenge because it's not something that comes easy to me. But I notice that when I do it, I feel less overwhelmed. If I do it before bed, I tend to go to sleep quicker and stay asleep longer. So I have my sleep is interrupted less. And so I know it just has a positive influence on how I'm feeling overall. But again, life happens. We get really busy. We get caught up. I feel like I'm always doing a bunch of stuff. Even in my high symptom days, I'm like trying to do things, which is that's another issue in and of itself that I will need to process in therapy. But in any case, so practicing mindfulness, practicing slowing down, practicing grounding exercises, tending to my nervous system, calming my nervous system, super duper important. It doesn't just help my sleep. It doesn't just help my mental health. It helps with my physical health as well. And then, of course, this is going to be the thing that I say all the time, that I'm going to sound like a broken record, but especially when I'm struggling with my mental health, I've got to set my boundaries. And so for me, that means, when folks ask me for a last minute request, I'm sorry, but I can't. Someone wants a last minute meeting, it's just not going to happen. If folks are pushing back against my boundaries, I'm reinforcing them. And this, I know that this is something that, I tried to be flexible when I can and strict when I have to. And so for me, I hope that, the folks around me understand that when I set a boundary, it is because I'm taking care of myself. And it is so that I can continue to maintain my relationship with them in a way that doesn't hurt me. And so if I'm setting more boundaries right now, it's primarily because I'm trying to make sure that I can survive. And then ultimately, once I get through this tough patch of this, once I start to feel better and not be grieving as substantially, then I can ease up on some of the boundaries and maintain the other ones so that I can thrive. So in any case, those are the things that I'm doing. I am giving myself time and space to be aware, to feel my feelings. I am tapping into my support network and letting people know how I'm truly feeling. I am making time, even when I'm resistant, making time to practice mindfulness, grounding exercises, or even spiritual rituals like lighting a candle or prayer to help me to tend to calming myself, calming my body, calming my spirit. And then, of course, I'm remaining very firm with the boundaries that I absolutely have to uphold to maintain my survival. That's what I'm doing right now. And then, of course, the one thing I will eventually get to is getting myself another therapist. Another thing that I'm doing that actually, I planned this before this even happened, but I had scheduled out a few months back that I wanted to do these series of collaborative workshops. And I arranged to do 3 collaborative workshops by the end of the year. I already did the first 2. You can check them out at my shop, gradschoolfemtoring.com/shop. The first one was on confidence building with my amiga Camila Lax Zapien. The second one was on pivoting from academia to industry with one of my besties, Doctora Esther Trujillo. And this one that's coming up is called Meeting Myself Inside Out. And it's learning about yourself and your protective parts and how to tend to your mental health through an IFS lens, internal family systems lens. This one's going to be facilitated by my friend, Joan Choi, who's a licensed counselor. And I'm really excited about this one. I'm going to be moderating, but I'm going to be learning alongside with you. And I'm going to use these insights to ultimately help me consider what type of new therapist I might want to work with. Am I going to want to work with someone who's trained in IFS? Or am I going to, work with someone who isn't necessarily trained in that, but also is culturally competent, or both? I mean, Joan is both. She's not my therapist. She's my friend. But maybe, yeah, we can all learn about how to tend to our mental health together. So if you want to join us, that workshop is happening on October 24th at 3 p.m. Pacific time. That's 6 o'clock Eastern time. You can get your tickets in the show notes, or you can also get your ticket at my shop, gradschoolfemtoring.com/shop. And I hope I'll see you there. I already know of at least 2 people that have signed up who I know personally, and they too are grieving. So please know that this is going to be a tender space, and that we are hopefully going to learn how to support ourselves and one another and keep working on our mental health and our well-being. That's it for this episode. I hope you found it helpful. I know it's a little bit more personal than I usually, every now and then I'll say a couple personal things, but this really felt hard for me to share. I actually had to do 3 takes of this episode, and this isn't even the best take, but I'm going to use this one because I was hesitating to talk about this so openly. But in any case, I appreciate you listening, and I'll talk to y'all next time. Thanks so much for joining me in the Grad School Femtoring Podcast. If you like what you heard, here are 4 ways you can support the show. The first is to make sure you're subscribed and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. If you email me a screenshot, I'll send you a surprise freebie. The second way is to get your copy of my free Grad School Femtoring Resource Kit, which includes essential information to prepare for and navigate grad school. You can access it at the link in today's show notes. The third way to support my show is to follow me on social media. You can find me on Instagram with the handle @GradSchoolFemtoring and on LinkedIn by searching my name. The last way to show your love is to order a copy of Is Grad School for Me, my graduate school admissions book for first-gen BIPOCs. Thanks again for listening, and until next time.